The Moose and the Birds. The Birth of a Dream. The morning sun was rising above a huge forest, and its bright rays were breaking through the heavy branches of the aged trees. The birds had long since woken up and were waiting for the insects to crawl out into spots warmed by the sun. A few butterflies were playing among the sun's rays. A brook snaked between the large and mossy stumps. Its cool water flowed rapidly, causing a lot of trouble for the local insects. The current carried them away on dry branches and foliage in an unknown direction. Many birds watched disappointingly as treats slipped away. In a small glade stood a huge, long-legged moose. Swarms of mosquitoes and midges swirled around him. Sniffing indignantly, he brushed them off with his ears and short tail. Suddenly, something stirred under his fur. First, one bump appeared, then a second, and two disgruntled, sleepy birds climbed onto his back from under his fur coat. Stretching lazily and pushing out their tummies, they reluctantly opened their eyes, looked around, and began to search for someone. The most nimble one noticed a familiar foot sticking out of the fur coat. They grabbed it together and pulled. First pull, the heavy-tailed one started complaining about his lower back. Second pull, the yellow-bellied one mumbled,
"Well, this one ate too much yesterday. He's sleeping like a log."
The friends took a few strands of the moose's hair and, as if they were in collusion, started to tickle the foot. It began to twitch and then completely disappeared into the fur. A loud "achoo" was heard, causing even the moose to open his eyes, but he calmly closed them again and continued basking in the sun. A bump appeared, and a dishevelled figure jumped out of the shaggy stronghold and immediately started lashing out in self-defense against his companions, randomly waving his long legs and wings. Dodging, the yellow-bellied bird landed head-first into the fur, while his friend fell on his back under the weight of his tail feathers. After calming down a bit, the freshly awoken bird directed his gaze to the horizon, where the brook was fading away, then closed his eyes, and, standing on one leg, spread his wings. The other two birds slowly got back up to their feet.
"Hey, Sharp Eye, why are you so moody this morning? We wanted to be kind and wake you up so that you wouldn't miss the sunrise, but look what you did to us, and now we're ravenous. Got us all nervous. You should join us for breakfast."
The feathered friend sobbed. Sharp Eye looked at his kinsman piercingly, frowned, but then quickly relaxed, smiled, and asked,
"Where shall we go?"
Honeybelly looked around sleepily, and his gaze landed on the area between the moose's eyes.
"Onward to the lookout. Look at those flying things up there. So meaty."
The birds headed towards the lookout. Once there, they made themselves crafted chairs from fallen pine needles, sat down, and opened their mouths. The midges were flying around chaotically in different directions, crashing into things and crawling over different surfaces. Whoop! A midge flew into one bird's open beak. Whoop! Now several midges flew into the others. Sharp Eye observed other birds flying around trying to catch the midges.
"Strange,"
he thought to himself.
"Why are they doing this, when they could just sit and enjoy them right away? What is this pointless toing and froing for?"
And so they enjoyed their more effective way of eating, and then, when sated, took a nap. Meanwhile, the moose was becoming more and more baked in the sun. Still dozing, he slowly began to move towards the shadows and stumbled on a stone, almost falling. The birds rolled off their chairs, but managed to grab on to the moose's fur.
"Moose, what's happening?"
They cried out at once.
"Oh, I just stumbled a bit. Did I disturb you?
The moose mumbled with his booming bass voice.
We were just sitting and chatting, you know.
Cracky Joints started.
I know all about your chatting. I bet you were stuffing your bellies again, weren't you? Of course, I'm grateful for your help in fighting off these annoying midges. But don't forget to keep yourselves in shape. Otherwise, soon you'll not be able to chase them.
Interrupted the moose.
But, why chase them? We can just sit with our beaks open, and they fly right in. I see no problem here.
Cracky Joints grunted.
You three are certainly peculiar. What if this opportunity ends and you have to start putting some effort into it? Look around. Everything is alive. It shines. It glows. It's all full of energy.
Whoa, hold on there. No need for that. It's a waste of energy, and the energy is here.
Honeybelly wiggled his tummy.
So, no ruses, please. The law of calmness dictates eat, sleep, and eat some more.
Said the moose, and calmly started walking towards a bush from which he blissfully began to peel off the young bark and leaves with his teeth.
There you go, Moosey. Eat, eat. We still have a lot of interesting stuff to see.
Sharp Eye remarked.
Oh, fellas.
Sharp Eye stretched, noticing confusion in the eyes of his friends.
I was gazing into the rolling droplets of morning dew on a forest clover. Hold on. Just cut to the chase. What droplets?
Cracky Joints interrupted.
Dew droplets like diamonds. Perfectly refined by gravity. Beautifully shaped. Refracting light rays into the frequencies of a coloured rainbow. So what was I talking about? Ah, yes. I remembered one of our grandmother's stories about a time long ago when our ancestors used to live in trees, hunt midges, work hard to get food for themselves and fly away. I do not remember what for, somewhere far away, leaving their lovely homes. Probably to suffer, so that later they would fly home feeling inspired. What was I talking about again? So, my grandmother told me there was something big, boundless and blue. It was neither a forest nor a brook. It was a big body of water. What was it called? I remember. It was the sea. Apparently you feel good just by looking at it, and something freezes in your chest. Then it lets go, and you become very calm. I suggest we go to the sea.
Hold on. Who's going to the sea? Me?
The moose mumbled and started to follow what the birds were saying more carefully.
Yes, it's a common cause. We'll move out closer to the evening as we need to rest, because the journey is long,
cried out Sharp Eye cheerfully.
I walk, and you rest. Something feels a bit off about this plan.
This is the law of energy preservation. You spend energy, we preserve it.
I don't like this idea at all. Do you know the way?
Well...
Sharp Eye looked around.
That way.
Why there?
I just remembered that that's the place where the sun sets. When I was just a fledgling, my grandmother whispered something about it to me.
I see.
The moose drawled quietly.
I actually don't care where we go. I just want to meet someone else of my kind. Because I've been completely alone for 8 years.
What do you mean alone? We're always with you.
The birds protested in surprise.
With such company, I will soon grow a beak and start laying eggs. But how I wish I could.
The moose sighed, looked at the moss under his hooves, and continued to nibble the young bush. The sun was already high up, the moose's back became warm, and the birds, inspired by their new cause, continued to discuss the upcoming journey.
Friends.
Sharp-Eye appealed busily.
Of course, naturally, we had to eat and sleep, but now it's time to prepare. I've heard that there are absolutely no midges where we're going. What are we going to eat?
No midges? That's great news.
The moose raised his ears happily.
I can finally look at every detail around me without missing anything due to blinking. I once tried to catch the moment of a water droplet falling into a puddle. I can't figure out where the droplet disappears to. Does it really transform into those unusual rings that look like the rings in a tree stump? Only these count moments instead of years. Moments.
Moosey!
Sharp-Eye interrupted.
I see that you don't have any more compassion for us. What will become of us?
Honeybelly immediately sat on his tail. His eyelids started twitching, and his tummy, as if in collusion with his eyelids, began to shake and rumble.
Yes,
said Honeybelly, stuttering slightly.
How can I? How? Oh, sleepless nights will bother me. I will. Life is so fleeting. Flashes by in but a moment. I don't want to spend that moment.
Honeybelly started moving backwards, burying himself in Moose's fur, ducked into his ear like into a small cave, and went silent.
Okay, don't worry. I have a brilliant plan. As I peered into the distance,
Sharp-Eye began again.
Cutting through the warm and moist air with my wings, I noticed a hollow in a tree over there. As I was enjoying the pleasant smell of young pine trees, I observed an interesting scene. A woodpecker storing a lot of delicious food in the hollow. So much food that there is even some sort of sound coming from the hollow. Hear that? This is what abundance sounds like, friends.
He looked at his friends who stood frozen in place. They were trying to catch every sound coming from the hollow. In order to keep their attention, Sharp-Eye continued,
Abundance. This is what will help us to carry out our journey, and if we store our food supplies properly, we can even avoid overeating. Otherwise, if we gain extra weight like bears before hibernation do, we'll become shaped like balls. Then we can hang from moose's antlers like baubles on a Christmas tree, but that's not our plan. Whatever food we can find now, we will wrap in foliage and hide it in the moose's wool.
Hey, what are you plotting there? What foliage? What for? Who's gonna clean up my fur?
The moose began to protest.
I hate how you gather these random things, because then I have to rub against trees to scrape off all your belongings. And it's not very pleasant, you know.
Moosey, I promise. No, we promise. Everything will be organized, and we'll clean everything up. And whatever we don't clean, well, we don't.
Sharp-Eye finished with a confident voice. The moose looked at the whole company with a puzzled face and then started complaining again.
I don't quite understand your methods here. What do you mean you promise to clean up and not to clean up at the same time? Your logic doesn't feel right here. It's like if I were to suggest that we go to the sea and then I go or don't go. In other words, I would stand still. You either clean up after yourself or you don't. I'm not agreeing to anything else.
No cleaning then,
Cracky Joints declared immediately.
No, This won't do. You must clean up.
the moose said calmly.
But you said it yourself that we either clean up or we don't. We had a choice and we made it.
Honeybelly added to the dispute. A long time ago, even the moose himself doesn't remember when exactly, a rule called speech is stronger than strength, abbreviated SSS, was introduced. You can pronounce it similarly to a snake's hissing sound. The meaning of the rule is simple. If you have already made a decision and agreed with someone, then don't change your mind no matter what. Sharp Eye and Honeybelly, as if at some rally, raised their wings and shouted in one voice, "Choice, choice, choice!" The moose took a deep breath and looked at the brook where a bug floating on a leaf was battling the current trying to get back to the land. He gritted his teeth and shook his head in different directions, as if wanting to throw off the burden of the three birds, but did it gently and with care. The birds didn't pay attention to his movements, however. They continued walking in a circle and shouting the word choice.
Fine, just calm down, otherwise you will get hungry again, eat and fall asleep. You still have to prepare for the journey, and I'm not going to wait. We agreed to late afternoon, and so it will be. Sss.
The moose hissed, and his eyes filled with satisfaction from the importance of the moment. The displeased birds calmed down, but continued to mumble something to themselves.
Moosey, we need you to walk closer to that tree where the hollow is. We're asking you very nicely, and we will be really grateful. We'll even sing you a lullaby of our choice today.
Sharp Eye persuaded, choosing the song for everyone in advance.
How come it's your choice?
The moose asked, surprised.
Well, we have something to sing today, so I wanted to share it with you. If you agree, of course.
Very well, have it your way today.
The moose hissed sarcastically. The birds often sang lullabies to the moose. Their songs were melodic and soulful. The moose dissolved in the calm vibration of their voices, and the wind, like the touch of his mother, gently lifted his fur. He always calmed down and fell asleep. After the lullabies, his sleep was deep and saturated with wondrous visions. The moose often had a dream that evoked mixed feelings in him. At times it was inspirational, at times it frightened him, and sometimes evoked the feeling of longing. It was an innermost feeling, and he did not share it with anyone. When rueful feelings weighed upon him, he stared long and hard at the top of the trees against the background of the night sky, playing with their images, dreaming and imagining the events he desired to happen. The moose looked towards the tree. It was a large old oak tree with deep wounds in the bark. It's amazing how such trees manage to live for centuries. They bear witness to a huge variety of amazing events, but at the same time, they remain silent. The damage on the bark and the branches told much about the tree's life, and the thickening of the trunk reflected a real story that unfolded in its distant childhood. Someone accidentally stepped on the oak tree before it was strong enough, and the trunk cracked. But despite this, it found the strength within to grow further. This amazing and selfless power of the love of life performs miracles. It heals, it inspires, it can even create something new. And these scratches? It was a lynx sharpening its blade-like claws there. From a distance, it might seem like a very cute cat playing with the sunbeams, exercising its back near a giant oak tree, but in fact, it's a very cunning and powerful predator. The moose's eyes go to a familiar mark on the oak tree, the trace of moose antlers, similar to the one he leaves on the trees when it is time to shed them. But he knows the marks of his antlers well, and these are not his, but something very familiar, something from his childhood. He tries to remember as his thoughts are interrupted by a loud cry from the long-legged bird.
Hey, Moosey, what's going on? We can't wait much longer because the sun is starting to go down.
The moose snapped out of his world of thoughts and headed for the oak tree. The birds opened their mouths in anticipation. The moose lifted his head closer to the hollow when suddenly, bam! Something hit his antlers. Bam! Again. The birds started to panic. This was Daddy Woodpecker, who noticed that someone was trying to disturb his fledglings, so he was bravely trying to drive away whoever caused the disturbance.
Woodpecker, why are you being so aggressive today?
Asked the surprised moose. But the woodpecker did not react to the moose's words and continued his attacks. The moose took a few more steps, moved his head and shook off the woodpecker, who fell like an arrow and got stuck in the damp moss, beak first.
Woodpecker, what's wrong with you?
The moose said, gently pulling the woodpecker by the tail out of the moss. The dirty woodpecker began to flap his wings again.
I'll tell you what, you're disturbing my children,
the woodpecker yelled.
What children?
The moose asked with curiosity. After some thinking, he turned his gaze away from the annoyed woodpecker and asked loudly,
Hey, birdies, enough hiding. What were you saying about abundance and whatnot,
Like 3 periscopes on a submarine, the birds were watching how the situation was unfolding from a safe place in the moose's fur.
Well, I simply saw how the woodpecker was carrying lots of bugs and worms into the hollow. I did not know that he was feeding his children.
Sharp-Eye fussed guiltily. Outraged, the woodpecker clapped his beak harder.
Even if I just stored food there, who allowed you to go in there without asking for permission and take everything? This is preposterous. This is barbarism. I told your ancestors, a sedentary life will lead to no good. Just look at yourselves. You have a beak, wings, a tail. You know what these are?
Well, what are they? You said it yourself. A beak, wings, a tail.
Honeybelly said calmly.
Ugh! They're a gift. They give you the gift of flight, a gift of swiftness, a gift of seeing what others can't see. It's speed. It's freedom. Do you really not understand that? The way you live is wrong. It contradicts nature. With this unlimited gift, you just stay there in one place and watch your bellies grow larger.
The woodpecker said in one breath.
Don't get started on our fit and slender appearance. Look at yourself. A beak with eyes on top? It's as thin as an arrow. And got so stuck in the moss you couldn't take it out.
Honeybelly said, outraged.
And this is my gift. Why should I spend a lot of physical strength and energy to make a big hollow in a tree when a small one is enough for me to fit into it with ease? Safe and effective. And why couldn't I get out? It's because I was tired of chasing you away. You think it's an easy task for me, a small woodpecker, to drive away a giant moose? There you have it. Now let's be clear. Why did you go to my hollow for food when you already have plenty of it?
The woodpecker asked and pointed at the moose.
There are so many flies around your wonderful friend.
Honeybelly, as if sensing the approach of trouble caused by hunger due to the lack of food during a mission, immediately took the initiative.
Here's the issue. We are going to the sea, and it has been known for generations that there are problems with food out there. So what will we do without food there? I will not function well without it. My legs will stop working, followed by my beak.
You mean that you wanted to ensure a carefree future at the expense of my work?
The woodpecker asked.
Well, yes. The law of energy preservation. We eat, you work.
The round-bellied bird nodded.
Such insolence! Of course, I would be happy to help you and share information about places where you could get enough food for such a journey, but with such an attitude towards me and my business, I don't really want to.
Honeybelly, sensing something was going wrong, decided to try a different tactic.
Woodpecker, if only we knew your family had grown, we would have filled our wings full of the various treats that swarm around moose and brought them to you. You're so great. You do so much for your children. You work so hard. Forgive us, please. It was the first and last time. You know us. We have never done this before, and suddenly we had to think about so many stressful things. The sea, the journey. We got quite worried.
Such words softened the woodpecker, but he was a wise bird, and it was not easy to make him turn a blind eye to the unacceptable attitude towards the natural order of things. He pondered for a moment, rubbed his beak with his wing, and spoke decisively.
So be it. I'll tell you about one place. But remember, this place is unusual. Many who flew there to hunt did not return. This is especially true of birds who are not very fast. If you go along this brook, you can get to a river. It is an unusual, very beautiful, clean river, and it attracts a lot of delicious things. This river has an edge. Water falls from it very noisily, forming a new river. I don't remember what such places are called. Fall water, waterfall. It doesn't matter now. And so above the place where the water falls, so it's a waterfall, yes, a waterfall. Anyway, above this place, sprayed droplets form an incredibly beautiful cloud. If you look at it in the sunlight, it doesn't just look like a cloud of droplets, but like the beginnings of a rainbow. So beautiful.
The woodpecker sighed.
Anyway, because of the accumulation of all sorts of organic waste that the river brings with it, this place is a real oasis for insects. There are also midges. Locals call them medges. There are so many of them that after inhaling a few times, you already feel full.
Having understood the core concept, Sharp Eye began to dive into the details.
Your tale was quite intriguing. I almost understand why no one came back from there. They decided to stay in that paradise of gluttony.
The woodpecker gave the birds such a nervous look that they got goosebumps under their feathers and continued.
Well, there are giant birds there so big that they can even catch fish. They are so strong, fast and ruthless that they often attack the smaller birds and take them away in their talons. No one knows where or why they are taking them. No one, listen to me, no one has ever come back after they were taken away to this distant, mysterious place.
Cracky Joints was not ready for such a turn, and his feet weakened as his stomach tightened. He slowly began to change his position to horizontal and crumpled down on the soft back of the moose. Honeybelly's eyebrow twitched again, and only Sharp Eye, without losing his optimism, interrupted the woodpecker before his speech turned completely sour.
I will ask you to stop at this point and not to spread panic among our ranks. What do you mean distant and mysterious place? If these terrible birds fly somewhere, then they know where this place is. And anyway, these tales about bird-eaters were invented by those who do not want to reveal the secret place of insane gluttony. I don't believe it.
Looking at Honeybelly and Cracky Joints, he was about to say something else in a different tone, but his eyes became riveted to a butterfly of extraordinary beauty soaring above the heads of the birds. It seemed to feel the attention and flew towards the blooming strawberries. It landed smoothly on a flower, folded its wings, and began to carefully search for something with its proboscis in the pistil. Sharp Eye was touched, and no longer in the tone he originally intended to use, turned to the rest of the birds.
Looking at you, I almost feel disappointed. We have a very important mission in front of us, and our spirit is already broken because of some tale from a mossy swamp. You!
He pointed his wing at his clumsy friend.
Get up already, and you!
He moved his wing to the yellow-bellied one.
Help him up. Our plan is very simple. As I said before, we will go to the sea, but I would still like to get provisions.
Sharp Eye looked at the woodpecker with intensely expressive eyes.
Why are you looking at me like that?
The woodpecker asked.
I worked hard to bring all of this. The only thing I can help with is information of where you can get a bunch of bark beetles and other larvae in one go, in the local area. There's this one stump close to here. Well, not just any stump, but the stump of a huge old oak tree. So I have a counter-offer for you. You help me to break the stump, and then everyone gets as much food as they can carry. Shall we shake our wings in agreement?
The offer interested Sharp-Eye greatly, so he hit the woodpecker's wings so hard that 2 of his feathers fell off.
Then it's settled. Now follow me.
He waved his wing and flew somewhere as fast as lightning. The birds and the moose looked with puzzled eyes into the trees.
Where is he going?
The moose mumbled. After a moment, the woodpecker appeared out of nowhere and asked surprisingly,
Why aren't you following me?
Well, how do I put this? We can't go that fast. You better just sit on my antlers and tell me where to go.
The moose kicked a rock. The woodpecker was about to repeat his dull speech again, but he changed his mind because of the realization that he, the woodpecker, could never try to control such a huge moose. Sensing a surge of strength from the limitless power given to him, he sat on the antlers and began to command the moose at the top of his lungs. After some time, they arrived at the place where the stump should be. However, no one could see it, so they started moaning and sighing expressively.
Hey, come over here!
The woodpecker shouted, flying to a bush behind which there was a black stump. Everyone approached and saw an unusually large stump covered with moss and eaten by bark beetles and mushroom mycelium. It felt damp. Honeybelly suddenly felt hunger pangs, and, not waiting for his tummy to stop rumbling, he said in a booming and unrestrained voice, "Food!" It was as if life had been breathed into the stump. Everything started moving, and then went back into hiding. The woodpecker looked towards Honeybelly, frowned, and started snapping his beak.
There it is!
The woodpecker poked him with his wing and commanded,
Let's ram through it!
What does let's ram through it mean?
The moose asked in surprise. The woodpecker rushed to the stump and with eyes like a kitten pleaded with the moose.
Moosey, only you, with your great strength, are able to break this stump into pieces. There's nothing I can do with my beak here. They're all going to run away while I'm trying to get in. Please, Moosey.
Everyone, take your positions. An extraordinary event is about to begin.
The moose exclaimed with excitement. The birds were trained to act in emergency situations and immediately took their places on the different parts of the antlers and gripped on tight with their claws so as not to fall. Standing on his hind legs, the moose hit the stump with his powerful hooves, splitting it into several parts. He then carefully stepped out of the cracked stump and began cleaning his hooves on the grass. Wildlife started flowing out of the stump. The woodpecker did not waste time and immediately started stuffing his beak with whatever he could find and made flying shuttle runs to his hollow. Sharp-Eye couldn't take his eyes off such a sight. Everything was swarming, but in a very organic and synchronous way. Each bug and insect had its own honed body movements. Some were hiding their belongings. Some were trying to prevent others from taking away their belongings. And some were just digging in random directions. Cracky Joints grabbed Sharp-Eye under his wings and started shaking him.
Hey, what's gotten into you? Time to prepare our food supply.
He tried to bring his friend back to his senses. Sharp-Eye wiped his eyes, snapped out of his trance, and immediately commanded,
Moosey, you see that cup-shaped piece of bark? Take it and scoop from the middle of the stump, please.
The moose grabbed the bark with his teeth, scooped up some living creatures, then put it on the ground and delivered it to the birds with his antlers. The delight of the birds could not be described. At first, like savages, they rushed to eat the most delicious ones. But when they could hardly work their beaks anymore, they remembered their original intention and began to fold the bark in such a way as to form a tube. They sealed the bottom and the top with moss, waited until the grubs and insects calmed down, and, having lazily caught the escapees, placed the Fudotubus on the antlers of the moose and sat down.
Beautiful.
Cracky Joints mumbled, looking at the work they had completed.
You can say that again.
Honeybelly whispered with a hint of sweetness. Meanwhile, Sharp Eye watched the woodpecker rushing back and forth and said prolongedly,
The law of energy preservation is proven.
After the woodpecker finished all his affairs and stopped complaining that one hollow was not enough, they said goodbye to him and made themselves some comfortable chairs from leaves and sticks. The sun had long since soaked up the dewdrops. The mushrooms had grown and shed their moss blankets, while the moose was slowly but surely walking there. A completely different world awaited our friends ahead, a world where they had not yet been, a world where there is a sea. Their hearts were filled with impatience and emotional thirst. An invisible force was leading them to their dreams, and the first steps of the moose were immortalized in the swampy soil.